All right, everybody, let's see if we can knock out 8s real quick, too. I'm still on the same drive, but 7s went by really quickly, so we'll see. I haven't reviewed for 8s yet, so we'll see how this goes, and I'll see if I leave out anything important. Oh, 8s. Okay, so I mentioned, I think it was back with the 5s, like 8s have a lot of energy, but I'm going to go into 8s with a little bit of a disclaimer. I think it's super easy to misjudge an 8. I think it's easy to misjudge all of these numbers. Like, a big thing that happens when you get into this that you have to catch yourself in is like not to just throw a number and like stereotype it or be like, oh, well, that's just the way it is, because people are still people, and none of these are prescriptive things for people. That's really important with 8s, I think, because 8s, like 3s for me, when I first read about them, I was like, ugh, who are these people? And then the more I explored, I realized that, oh, I've got friends who are 3s and I've got friends who are 8s, and they're fine. But the descriptions on these ones sound really rough to me. So here's the deal with 8s. 8s challenge everything all the time. That's part of why they're so frustrating. Oh my goodness. Like it, okay, here we go. Cron and Stabile talk about 8s as people that have such enormous energy that when they walk into the room, you can't help but notice that they're there. They almost seem like life of the party types. They're the ones who either command or demand attention, not because they need it for their own like self-value, like a 3 would. Like, they don't need to be seen as successful to be happy like a 3 would. But 8s do have this tremendous amount of energy that when they are not aware of it, can just go flying around the room and like body slamming people up against the wall. Now, if an 8 is like your friend and you agree with that 8, you're probably loving that 8. That 8 is fantastic because they come in strong and passionate, and they know what they think, and they're going to let you know what they think. But on the same, the flip side of that coin, if you're not on the same side as an 8, oh, they're going to drive you crazy, because that same passion and energy and everything else is also going to body slam you, but you're going to have to like fight against it. So that's the deal with 8s. They are super energetic, large presence, hard to miss. So what's their deal? 8s get into what is called the anger triad. So 8s, 9s, and 1s all have to deal with anger in some way. So for 8s, that anger kind of comes out of a distrust overall. 8s seem to be people who, at some point, they have felt betrayed in their past somewhere. Something went wrong, and they don't trust people, typically. They are afraid that if they side too closely with something, that person or that group or that organization is going to turn on them. And so they go through, honestly, looking for causes to kind of pick up and champion and get out of my blind spot. Turd burger. Okay. Safety. Okay. So they will pick up a cause. They will find other people who have been betrayed or have been slighted or need their help, and they will defend that group very, very passionately. Now, what determines a group that needs to be defended, that changes depending on the person and the circumstances and what they're seeing. In some cases, they're great with social justice issues because they see something that's really messed up and terrible, and so they're like, oh my goodness, we need to do something about that, and so they will get in there and fight that fight. But at the same time, if they've seen other groups that have been kind of abused or messed with, they'll fight for them just as hard. So, for instance, a more common idea for social justice would be to look at like race and gender and fight on the side of minorities and for women because they have historically and systematically been either disenfranchised or, their voices aren't heard as much. That's where I would come in. I'm like, hey, if I'm going to defend somebody, I'm going to defend the groups that for centuries have not had their way and have not had a say in the way that... I got stuck in a rhyme and I was trying to find another one. I lost it. They're people who don't get their voices heard. But an 8 can just as easily look at the modern context and say, who's demonized all the time? White people. Why are white people always getting abused? Why are white people always talked about as if they're the bad guy? Now, from my perspective, open biases here. You can see them. I want to be like, yeah, but white people have been like in power forever. Like the European and European American thing, they don't get a lot of sympathy from me because I'm looking at it on a grand scale. Like I'm looking at it on a centuries long scale. And based on that, they're fine. They're gonna be okay. But somebody who's not looking at it from that kind of perspective and just looks at the last 2 decades maybe, and they see more and more efforts being pushed out there for not just equality, because they're not gonna be like, equality is dumb. Like, no one says that unless they are the biggest jerk face in the entire history of the world. But they will be people who look at me like, oh, so just because they're a person of color, they get scholarships for college. White people don't get it. That doesn't seem fair. An 8 can still pick up that cause and run with it. An 8 can look at Christianity in America and say, like, what? We're not on top of the pile anymore, which is how I would perceive it. I'm just like, oh, look, Christians are throwing a fit because they've had the state agree with them for like over 200 years. And now when they say, hey, you can marry whoever you want, the church is like, that's not right, and they get mad at the government, but the government never made a contract to say that they would do what the church says. But whatever. An 8 could just as easily look at that and be like, it really does feel like the church is being attacked, and then they're going to want to like rise up and defend it. So, good thing, bad thing, best part of you is the worst part of you. 8s are ready to go to war. They are ready to fight. They are ready to defend a cause and set things straight in the world, and it's a wonderful thing. But the bad side is, this is for everybody. There's no set way to know if you're on the right or wrong side of an issue. So that can be tricky for 8s. And because of all their energy and because of all their passion, they can come across as bullies. They can come across as just like super aggressive and abrasive, because they say what they think. They just throw it out there. And yeah, that's how 8s run. And it's been really important for me to consider 8s over this last year, though they wouldn't say it outright on the first podcast I heard on the Enneagram. Mike McHargue thinks that Donald Trump is a very unhealthy 8, and Ian Cronz wouldn't confirm or deny it. But there's a possibility that's the case when you think of a abrasive, not really tactful or polite person. But that's just the negative side. There are positive sides, because again, if they're defending you on your side, they're your champion. They are your hero. They are the ones who are going to fight for you. So here's another thing with 8s. 8s don't like to be told what to do. Part of it, I think, is part of that betrayal idea. They are very independent. They are people that if you're going to be like, hey, you need to do this, like, yeah, what if I don't? Then they flip a table and punch you in the face. So that can be the hard part. I was talking to someone, or maybe someone like this. Like, you're talking to them, like, why are you even saying these things? And they're like, well, I don't actually mean it. I just like to mix it up. I like to just get in there and mess with people. That's the kind of things that an 8 would say. They don't always say what they mean. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. They don't always say what they mean, but they do love to, like, throw a live grenade into a discussion and then not even take part in the discussion after that. It's like, well, what about this? So it's like abortions, right? And then they just watch it all fight. But for an 8, that fight, that battle is not just them being a jerk. For an 8, finding someone to spar with intellectually is a really fun, somewhat intimate act where they can find somebody who will stand up to them, not let them mow them over, and like kind of hold their own. 8s are like, this guy's awesome. It's almost like the stereotype, like when guys get in fights, they come out as best friends. That's like the 8's mentality. Okay, so when you think about like a lot of the masculine, old school masculine ideals, they're 8 ideals. They are, you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do my own thing. You got a problem with me? Let's fight. Okay, we fight. You did good. I did good. Let's go get a beer or whatever. That's 8s. That's what they want to do. So the challenge with dealing with an 8 is when they come at you like that, to not just let them have their way. And it's exhausting. It's so tiring. Because you're not even sure if they believe what they're saying. Sometimes they're just messing with you. And if you think that's the case, I guess call them out on it. I've been trying to do that more with some people. I'm like, oh, come on. You don't even think that. You're just trying to mess with me. And sometimes they'll just smile because they know that they're messing with me. Okay, so lots of energy. Not always aware of how they're coming across to people. That's hard for 8s. Like if you want to start 8s, I can sound really negative on 8s, and I'm more riled up than usual, you can tell. But people can be really hard on 8s. But the thing about 8s is they don't know all the time that they're coming across this way. They don't always know that what they've done might be hurting people's feelings. They're not into that. They don't want that to happen. They don't want to come across as some like angry jerk face, whatever. But sometimes they come across that way. So making sure 8s are aware of what they're doing to you would also be kind of helpful. Be like, hey, I know you're not trying to do this, but man, it stings when you're doing whatever. So you got to watch out for that. What else? They like to fight. It's fun for them. I used to have a friend. I'm not an 8, and I don't think he was an 8 either. But just to kind of, again, that sparring partner. When I used to go to church, it was the best because we'd be sitting in Sabbath school, and I'd throw something out there. And if you don't know what Sabbath school is, it's Bible study stuff. Sorry, it's very Adventist specific. But I'd throw out an idea, and he's like, I disagree. But we had the best disagreements. They were amazing. And he was never afraid to call me out, and I was never afraid to call him out, and we didn't always end up on the same page, but it was the best. That's what 8s look for. That's what 8s want out of friendship, out of, kind of those interactions. So, health and unhealth. I forgot to review this. Where do 8s go? I should have reviewed that one. That's what happens when I'm in the car like, let's just do 8s. I don't remember. Okay. 8s. I don't want to make it up. You know what? I'll tag it onto 9s tomorrow because I don't want to butcher this one. But 8s, very misunderstood, very difficult to work with sometimes. But if you can get to the point to realizing that they are not out here to be mean, they're not out here. Oh, here comes the sun. You gonna get in here? Yep, there you are. Do 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 do. Okay. Sometimes the way these end are so low energy after so much. Okay, let's finish this strong. 8s. You gotta give them time. I mean, for all the numbers, all the people, you have to be patient with people. How do 8s become healthy? They need to just, I'm going to say they need to be aware. Again, I didn't review this. I'm like, I'm still driving. Let's do 8s. They need to be aware. They need people in their lives to call them out on stuff, I think. and then to not back down. 8s don't like being told what to do, but if you challenge them and then just like fold, they're just like, psh, what? Really? You're just going to fold like that? That's pathetic. And if they're really unhealthy, you can put that in tweet form, and then you can see the presidential equivalents. Let me just throw this out, if because it feels too current. If you're like, oh, Trump, 8s and Trumps are the same, yuck, if that makes you feel like 8s are bad and you feel superior. Most people think Hitler was a 6, so don't get too on your high horse on that one. Why am I ending so poorly? Trump and Hitler, they're always linked. Okay. I'm sorry, everybody. So, call them on their stuff. Spar with them. For any conflict you're getting in if you're getting into it with somebody, you need to not always take it super seriously either. I'd throw that in. That's not something I read. That's just something that I do. Because you will burn all of your energy on arguing with an 8, and you still won't win, because 8s have more energy than any other number on the Enneagram. And if you've ever really gotten into it with one, you know that's true. You come out the other end like, oh my goodness, I'm just exhausted. I can't believe I spent that much time arguing with that person. Sometimes I feel like YouTube comments are 8s. Sometimes. I need to find more positive things about 8s. I'll just go back to how they champion everything. They do. If there's a group that is underprivileged, underserved, underrepresented, an 8 is the type of person who will pick up that cause and run with it. They're the ones who say this needs attention brought to it. They're the ones who say that this is messed up and we need to fix it. And so finding the 8s in your life and working with them, and the most you can align yourself with them, or aligning them with you, however you want to do that, that's good for you. They kind of become like your social bodyguard. And that could be a really great thing. So, goodness, this ended up 17 minutes. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm going to go. So, have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you next time with 9s.